right. Welcome back to the Partnership Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lavoie. Today's guest is a friend, Dan Caldwell, who leads technology partnerships at Klaviyo. Really thrilled to have Dan on the show. He's had a firsthand contribution to helping Klaviyo's tech partner ecosystem grow from a small early stage motion into now what is recognized as a trusted and reputable scaled global function. He's navigated everything from product integrations to platform politics. He's worked across shipping, help desk, ad tech, and returns categories, and he's developed a strong point of view on what actually makes tech partnerships scale and what doesn't. Today, we're going to dig into enablement, AI, and partnerships, why asking for intros to customers is probably the wrong move. So yeah, Dan, thrilled to have you with this.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
All right. Well, look, Dan, this is long overdue. I'm thrilled to have you on here. Obviously, I cut my teeth in tech partnerships, so this is a near and dear topic to my heart. And for those who might not be aware, Dan and I go way back, back in my gorgeous days, and even at Aftership, we had done a lot together. So I have a ton of respect for you, Dan. So I'm thrilled to get the audience to hear from you. Before we get into the fun stuff, we always start each episode with 5 quick hitting questions. Gives you a chance to warm up, gives the audience an opportunity to get to know you a bit better. You ready for that? Just first thing that comes to mind.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right, cool. First things first. What's one fun fact about yourself that you rarely tell when people ask you that question?
Ooh, all my fun facts I say all the time to anybody, probably 3 times. But I'd say I love to cook, but I don't post on Instagram, so I don't think anybody sees my work. But it's something I really enjoy.
That's okay. So I'll follow up with that one because that's a hot topic for me. You had a exhausting week. You know, you're home alone, wife's away, you're cooking yourself, just some delicious, perfect meal. What meal are you going for?
I make really good fried rice with whatever's in the fridge. And so that's probably what I'd be rocking.
All right, I always knew I liked you, Dan. That's a good answer. Okay, cool. Now we'll flip it over to a more relevant question for this audience. What's one partner ask you see all the time that is like an immediate red flag? So picture like new partner, early stages of the relationship, and then they do something where you're like, whoa, my ick meter just went off.
Yeah, it's when they just kind of don't get it, or a lot of asks out the gate. Like if they try to ask to present to my CS team on that first call before we've really established value, that's a red flag for me.
Totally fair. And can't help but feel like that's a subtle kind of dig, a friendly dig at me, Dan, because Lord knows when I was early in my partnerships career, a little bit aggressive, the gorgeous culture especially can be a little bit aggressive. So yeah. I'll take that as like a little friendly dig, so to speak. But to ask a more practical question on that, Dan, you've been at Klaviyo, even just in the years you've been at Klaviyo, it's grown so much. Like you guys just reported another fantastic earnings call. So curious, that red flag is always true. I subscribe to that belief as well, but help us understand, like, as a company like Klaviyo has just grown so much, so fast in your years, where you are increasingly the bigger fish relative to the partners, how has it become more challenging for you to have to kind of raise the expectations and bar for partners to like really earn their way into like tier 1 status? Put another way, Dan, earlier days, you have more time, more flexibility to like be more scrappy and deliver more to partners. But now you have so much more demand than you can possibly serve. So how has it changed over the years, how you kind of think about who you can prioritize as a follow-up?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Certainly has evolved over the years. And it evolves both with Klaviyo and its growth, but then also our goals and just the environment that we've been in e-commerce for the past several years, because there's been shifts in the wind there too. But yeah, I'd say this with Klaviyo, it's both. We could be a bigger fish, especially in the ecosystem that we're in. But I've managed partnerships where we weren't. And so it's a really fun place to work, to where I managed the Google partnership where we launched that integration, and we're not the big fish there.
That's a rare one.
Yeah, there's a ton of integrations that feed into Klaviyo. And you just have to really focus on your prioritization. And at first it was difficult, so we didn't have a ton of the processes for that. So it was like speaking to me or one of my colleagues to get the partnership underway. But now we have hundreds of integrations inbound. And so it's been this process of creating process to manage those folks at scale. But then, hey, you still can't do everything at scale. So then just clearly outlining, what are your goals? What are we trying to do? That outline to the top line missions of this company, center around those. And hey, what are those partners, the subset of partners, a limited amount that really help you hit those goals? And how do we double down on that? It's kind of been an evolving journey for us.
I love that. That's great answer. And then we're going to unpack more of that later today in today's conversation. So we'll park that for now. Third heavy, quick hitting question for you is, obviously you have this great entry point into partnerships from customer support, which we will double click on in the next segment. So the question for you here, Dan, is what's one thing customer support taught you that has just like really showed up in a positive, productive way in your partnerships career?
Yeah, I think probably two things. I mean, in customer support, you get asked every question under the sun. And so you just learn so much about the product from a high level, but also a technical perspective as well. So that's been really helpful for me, translating that into technology partnerships. Then also customer empathy and understanding the diversity of customers, the different knowledge that they'll have, the different parts of their journey. And one of the nice things of customer support, I dealt with pre-sale conversations with small and large potential customers, and post-sale. They've been here for 5 years. These are small and very large customers. So you just get an incredibly diverse view of questions, but also who you're speaking to.
I totally resonate with that. I think customers, if you were to like power rank which functions are like the strongest on your product, I think like customer support, customer success, and like the actual product developers themselves probably are like among like the top 3, so to speak. So I totally agree with it. It allows you to build this like customer centric approach, which I think candidly too many partner professionals are lacking. And I think it leads to greedy behavior. Then the final anecdote I'll share is, obviously I cut my teeth at Gorgeous, which is a customer support help desk. And like literally the critical onboarding task you have to get done your first 2 weeks is you have to complete 50 support tickets for Gorgeous, like inside Gorgeous's own help desk for its own customer base. I had to answer 50 tickets. And I'm telling you this, Dan, that was one of the most frightening things I've ever had to do because like you're asking questions I don't have the answers to. I got to go find them. So anyways, that totally resonates. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just such a wealth of knowledge sitting on those teams. So I'm always learning.
Yeah, your learning of your own product and your customer's point of view, it dramatically accelerates.
Exactly.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah, but these last 2 quick ones. This is a fun one. So in my sleuthing to like research you in preparation for this interview, I saw you did an interview a couple of years ago with like Noah and another person. And you just happened to mention you were taking up golf lessons. So I took note of that. So my question for you is, A, are you still doing that? And B, what's harder, learning how to golf or mastering tech partnerships?
Golf is the hardest thing in the world, Chris. I don't know what it's a miserable sport.
I know that.
Oh my God. So golf is harder than anything I do in my life, it seems like. So I'll say that I am still trying. I am persistent. I will say I've been taking my golf lessons. It is something that I've struggled to get decent at, but I have taken 5 strokes off my game since I started lessons. So we're making progress.
That's legit. That's a bit of a flex, but we'll allow it. And yeah, it reminds me of Robin Williams. I don't know if you've seen his famous golf skit where he does like a Scottish accent and he explains what golf is. It's absolutely hilarious. Cool. All right. Last quick hitting question for you, Dan. We ask every guest this. If you weren't in partnerships or tech and money wasn't a concern, what would Dan Caldwell be doing?
Yeah, good question. What I would love to do is, I think there's a big gap in our education system right now for teaching personal finance and life skills at the high school level, especially in communities. So I would love to get plugged in as a teacher at the high school level for teaching those type of skills.
Well, we love that. I think that's very admirable work. And I think now that we have such a complex finance system where you've got crypto and you've got complex markets and different things, like no one learns financial literacy. Lord knows I didn't, and I was reckless, right? You don't even understand how credit cards work and like how painful interest is, like how much you're really paying in interest. We can go on and on. So I definitely support that, Dan.
Exactly. Just understanding and helping people, when they get to adulthood, what are the benefits? Because credit cards can be an amazing tool. They could also be a massive trap. Same thing with crypto, same thing, predictive markets. Like you have all these like great opportunities that also have downsides. I don't think we do enough work to like.
We don't do anything really.
We do nothing.
The bar is low. So,
exactly.
I'm rooting for you in the partnerships world, but candidly, I also hope you get to serve that world as well, because Lord knows we need it. Okay, cool. Well, look, let's take the training wheels off. Let's get into the fun stuff. And we always start first segments with our origin story. Yours is support to partnerships. So the main question for you here is, you didn't take a classic partnerships approach or path, so to speak. So you talked a little bit earlier, but like, what did customer support train you to see that kind of, really helped you like get started fast? You already mentioned like empathy for the customer and like really understand their product, but like what else can you tell us about certain skills perhaps that translated well into the partnerships world?
Yeah, I think high volume of tasks and
Yeah.
context
Complex
switching
scope.
very
Yep.
quickly was helpful for that. The product knowledge, what I talked about earlier, is certainly probably the number one thing that landed me in my first job in partnerships, was having that. But that context switching and just being able to do high volume of tasks definitely helped too.
Got it. And that's interesting. I want to double click on that one, Dan, because I teach this all the time in our communities and courses. And actually, I make it week one, which is literally how we spend our time. And a lot of my students show up like, really? Like, I thought I was here to learn about partnerships. Why are we talking about time management? It's like, look, partnerships, to your point, Dan, is so complex, so many moving pieces. And I feel like the average partner manager wakes up on a Monday with a plan, right? And like, oh, I'm so ready for this week. And then by like literally 2 p.m. on a Monday, they've already got punched in the face and they're spending the rest of the week reacting, right? Instead of having their hands on the wheels. So first question is like, can you relate to that? Like on a given week where you have a plan and then chaos ensues? And then what is your personal playbook, so to speak, for like gripping the wheel? Like we all get punched in the face at some point early in the week where we had a plan and then things get thrown into chaos. Some of us get dragged along for the rest of the week and we don't get as much done. And people like yourself who can be more disciplined. Like, so the question is like, when you know what hits the fan and the week is just going off the rails a little bit relative to what you had in mind, how do you not just let the week go by and you don't get as much done? Like, how do you kind of take control back, perhaps leaning on some of the skills you developed in customer support?
Yeah, I think you have to rank it, your tasks and what you need to do based off of both importance, but then urgency. And
Yep.
some things that are, I try to prioritize something that's like, this is a blocker for other people to progress to get this project across the line.
100%.
And so really focusing on those tasks would be a good one.
Yep.
But then I think the other thing here too is just understanding like not getting whiplash and we get punched in the face, try to not let it hurt too. So I think there's the prioritization, but then also just trying to take a deep breath when those things come through, because I think it could be emotionally jarring sometimes. I think people a little bit newer to partnerships kind of get caught in
Overwhelmed.
that times a little bit overwhelmed. And so I
Yep.
think it's both a practical project planning, prioritization, and being smart about that, but also just from an emotional perspective, you're trying to run a marathon here and just making sure you're keeping your wits about you and not letting it get to your head too.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. I think two key takeaways for our audience, like A, like zoom out a bit. And I think this is one of my favorite tips of all. Like when you know what's hitting the fan and you're so stressed out and everything feels like it's breaking, zoom out and be like, okay, this is a blip in an otherwise long journey. You're gonna have plenty of highs, you're gonna have plenty of lows. So like this is just one of those lows, so zoom out. But more practically, one key takeaway from Dan's segment there is like, look, you should literally spend more time thinking about how to spend your time. You didn't say those exact words, Dan, but you talked about like prioritization. Like that is literally requires stopping what you're doing, taking time to map out what you could do, ranking them, time boxing, and scheduling those in. So I teach this concept all the time. Spend more time literally thinking about how you're going to spend your time. It's, in my opinion, a very underrated action. Does that resonate, Dan?
It does. I need to do a better job of it at times too.
Sure.
It takes that discipline, and so taking the time to do it is really important. But
Yep.
yeah, it's massive. Like
It's like
for
finding
example,
time to stretch and go to the gym and like learn and read. Like these are the things that like we think is important. We're going to do it, and then when push comes to shove, those are the first things that get cut. So like if you have time in your calendar, like, oh, I'm going to like use this time to think about how I spend my time. Don't cut those blocks out. Those are honestly one of the most valuable blocks you're probably going to have in your week.
absolutely. And the tricky thing about that is the most critical times to do that exercise are the times where it's hardest to do that. And
Well said. Well said. Well, you heard it here first from someone who has a very complex role, but is able to lean on a system like that. Cool. Next segment is on early mistakes and stakeholder whiplash. So this is another segment we always start early with, which is like, look, like early days in partnerships, what were some of the biggest lessons, biggest kind of hiccups or mistakes perhaps that you made that were painful and ultimately helped you kind of overcome them? Our audience really resonates with these type of segments because it's relatable. It helps us kind of understand. So the first question is like, you've talked about struggling to adjust across AEs, PMs, CMOs, even and CEOs. So I'm curious, like, what did those early fumbles or challenges look like for you personally? Like, going to a complex org like Klaviyo, even when you joined, just talk to us about adjusting to working with so many different persona types and stakeholders, which I agree is a really challenging element of being a partnership manager.
It is, yeah. When I first started in partnerships, I knew a lot about like the integration and what we should do with the partnership, and I basically in every email presentation would just like try to share all that information in there. And I wouldn't really tailor it to my audience. And it was a critical mistake. I remember very vividly one time I had an email from a CEO, and this is before Klaviyo, but they want to know more about the partnership. And I like sent them these like detailed instructions on how to create a demo account and to get tested. And it's like my boss sees it, face palms, and was just like, the CEO is never going to create the demo account. And
Yeah.
I remember that just very vividly of like, oh man, I really didn't tailor this at all. It's a really good learning opportunity. So I just do my best to put myself in those people's shoes and then tailor my responses to, hey, what do these people care about, and really focus on those elements.
Yeah, we appreciate the vulnerability in sharing that. I'm sure that, I mean, it was obviously painful. You snap remembered it, and I can relate to that. So as a follow up to that of like, how do you then start to develop the skill of like, not just reading the room, but like understanding how to approach different stakeholders in different situations, like differently? Like, and today, actually, I just taught a lecture on like cross-functional collaboration. So how would you advise your typical partner manager, let's just say a tech partner manager, who has to deal with product and engineering stakeholders, has to deal with marketing, has to deal with customer success? Like, what if you were to give them one tip for how to like really take a big step forward in a healthy way in any of those key relationships? Like, do any tips come to mind of like, how do you strengthen your most important cross-functional relationships, period? Like, where does Dan go when you think of that question?
I think you either need to ask or know what their goals are and figure out how your message or communication to them is going to help them hit their goals. And
Yep.
I'll give you an example of something we did together. It was a lunch and learn I did at the gorgeous office in San Francisco. And I didn't focus so much on the Klaviyo product and how Klaviyo customers hit their goal with this integration. I found out what the gorgeous CSM's goals are tied to their customers. And then I translated how this integration helps them. And I think that's like the missing element. It sounds pretty simple. I know a lot of people do this already, but I've seen more misses on this than I've seen hits from enablements content or enablement sessions of really drilling down to like in their day-to-day, how are you helping their day-to-day versus like a general positivity and goal hitting, like getting as specific as you can to hitting their goals.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that, Dan. And that's a key takeaway already for the audience. And I agree, which is like translation. Like, you literally need to learn how to speak a different language. Like pretty well, literally. Like, you might be speaking English still, or whatever language you're speaking, but you're speaking now an engineering friendly language or a product friendly language. And Dan already shared a vulnerable anecdote earlier where he was like speaking to a CEO as if he was speaking to like a general partner person, so to speak. And what that does is it creates cognitive dissonance for that person, where they then have to figure a bunch of stuff out in order to understand what is expected of them. And so you have to like remove the barriers. And the best way to do that is to, again, speak their exact language. And then the other point Dan made, how do you actually do that? You need to like literally spend a day in their life, right? Like, you need to understand and absorb, talk to them, get in meetings with them, immerse yourself. Like, customer success is a big one. The average partner manager has too little respect for customer success. They overwhelm them with and inundate them with like, hey, can you recommend your customers to my partners? Go shadow an average customer success manager. You'll learn so much. And I think that's what's required to understand the language they speak, and therefore tailor how you kind of approach and try to work with them. Does that track with you, Dan?
100%. I mean, CSMs are the key person to get value from a technology partnership oftentimes, but people go about it the wrong way. And it's something that you and your team did really good with that Klaviyo partnership back in the day, is your outreach to them was not asking for introductions. It was to demonstrate value from the integration and how you're helping their customers. And you knew you're kind of playing the long game there, to where, hey, if this message to the CSM is adding value to them, I'm earning their mind share, which will then long-term translate to the referrals and stuff that you needed on your side. But if you just started with the referrals, you're going to get ignored after that. So you started with the adding value. Now it's I think a huge part of the success of the partnership that we spun up.
100%. And I appreciate that. And look, I know that the latter doesn't work, because that's how I tried to do it for the longest time in the early days when I was less mature. But you're right. Like, you have to play the long game. And I think that's another key takeaway for a lot of partner managers I see listening is like, look, we all are on these intense quotas, whether it's monthly or quarterly. It creates a lot of pressure, which can lead to some bad behaviors, like over pressuring reps and trying to be a little bit selfish and greedy. But like, to Dan's point, like, you have to play the long game, and you can't burn relationships, because once they're burned, they're toast. right? Like if a couple, and the thing is like these things spread like diseases, right? Like say you give a bad impression to some influential enterprise AE at Klaviyo. Guess what? He or she will probably message a couple other reps, and then all of a sudden your reputation's tanked. This is real. Me and Dan have both seen and felt this. So to Dan's point, like you have to play the long game, treat it like a customer relationship, not some transactional one, and then good things can happen.
Yeah,
Cool.
very smart. It spreads crazy on it in a good way and a bad way too. And so there's a
100%.
negative side you don't want, but if you really crush it, you really add value, do this the right way, that's how you spread.
It's really hard to build it up, but it's really quick to lose. It's like hard to lose weight, but it's really easy to gain it.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, next one, this is one of two first deep dives. This is when we go deep on like topics that we know you are really interested in. So this first deep dive is on navigating tech partnerships within big platforms, right? And as context for those who maybe aren't so familiar on the tech side, like every tech startup typically starts as like a pure point solution, ISV, so to speak. And then all of them pretty well have dreams of becoming a real platform. And, you know, universally accepted definition of a platform varies, but like, it's like, I think of it as you're not just multi-product, but like other businesses can build on top of you, right? Like think of like the Shop of the world. And now Klaviyo, you know, being the first to IPO on the Shopify ecosystem is now a full-fledged platform. So the question is, like you sit on the platform side now. So the first question is like, what actually makes a tech partner stand out inside of Klaviyo's ecosystem, right? So like you're so complex now, you have so many integrations, you're a complex product, everything's evolving. So like, how does Klaviyo now view what a standout tech partner looks like? If you close your eyes and you think of the standout partners that exist today, like what are their kind of defining characteristics?
Yeah, you have to hit a few bars, and
Sure.
the bar keeps growing with the more integrations that we have. And it's not like we don't value and see value in all those other ones, but just the basic math of it, there's a lot more integration. So how do you stand out from the crowd? And there's going to be elements like you do something unique, you solve a unique problem set that other integrations don't. You're not 1 in 10 of X type of platform out there for our customers. So either you have a niche for the problem you're solving or a customer base that you're solving. It's really difficult when integration comes in, there's 10 other platforms similar to them. They probably do something better, but they're not clearly communicating, hey, we serve enterprise better than these partners or this specific use case and customers. So understanding where they fit in from a niche perspective. But I would say like my kind of gut check, I have great relationships with the CSMs here at Klaviyo. So I'll stress test some. If I see something and I'm just like, oh, this is cool, because I ran into somebody at Shop Talk or whatever it is, I'll run it by CSMs, try to gauge their interest level on it. But what really jumps out to me is when those reps, whether it's sales or CS, comes to me about an integration. Yeah, those are the 100%. Ones that I notice because they're earning mind share. Either good or bad. Hopefully it's good. But those are the ones that really jump out to me, where hearing it from the field themselves, because that means it's coming from the customers themselves. So there is a product market fit. We're probably solving problems here. This is worth digging into more. So at a high 100%. Level, it's that. And then, yeah, depending on our goals as a department, individual, program, Klaviyo itself, when we're really focused on growing SMS, that's why Gorgeous was such a big part of our partnership program at that time. It was a key product for us, had a great integration that plugged into SMS. We're going to lean into there. That was a big goal of ours. Goals, evolve over time. So any partner that we're helping those, they jump out to.
Amazing. Yeah, that's super helpful. And then as a good follow-up question to that, how do you think, so that's like a good approach in terms of thinking about how to, what are some of the signals you're looking for? And to follow on that signal conversation, Klaviyo, the size you're at now, even earlier on when you had started, as a predominantly big fish, so to speak, you get inundated, I'm sure, with just a ton of like inbound traffic. Everyone wants to apply to be a partner. Some are like bigger, more mature companies, which are easy to like spot and prioritize. But then a lot of them are more like mid-tail, long tail. So the point blank question for you, Dan, is like, what mechanisms do you have in place, and how do you approach in general kind of triaging and qualifying and then potentially engaging or just disqualifying like inbound, right? Like I know that's a heavy part of your remit, so to speak. And I was talking to Carolina Kondrat, who leads global partnerships at Domain, which is obviously one of the top Shopify agencies, and they get hit up with a ton of this as well. And she has some really powerful frameworks for doing this. So I'm curious, how do you and the tech team at Klaviyo handle the good problem to have of like, hey, everyone wants to integrate with Klaviyo and get listed on your marketplace and get a lunch and learn and get a one-on-one with Andrew, so to speak. So how do you kind of triage And then ultimately from a workflow perspective, either put them in disqualified, long tail, no touch, maybe we'll have a partner manager or someone like yourself take a call. Like, how do you kind of go through that motion?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few different things to touch on there. There's the process side of things. So we have an intake form that we're getting critical information that helps us at a high level evaluate that partner to see what the opportunity is there. And we have a team that monitors those. We do track the installs attached ARR from these integrations. So we get a pretty good sense, hey, are customers using them? What type of customers are using them? Does this align with where we're trying to go from a program? That helps us prioritize. But a lot of effort is a big part of what I was doing last year is to help scale this as well. Because there are hey, let's find the really strategic partners that may be difficult to find, but hey, with this forms and the data that we're doing. And I think part of it too, the really good partners, they find a way to get on your radar too. So there's that aspect. But
100%.
just as important, at least in my opinion, just as important as those 5 or whatever number of top strategic partners, it's that base. And unfortunately, we just don't have the team to take phone calls with every single one of them. But essentially what we did was we built a portal and a ton of resources, and I wrote a lot of it, and most of it was inspired by those hundreds of conversations that I've had with integration partners. And there's just common themes, and there's questions like, hey, how do I make sure that this integration is successful? We have that written down. We have that story in there, really mimics what a phone conversation with me looks like. That was the goal of all of that stuff. I don't think it gets read a lot. So, I would just encourage people to be a little disciplined in reading those things, because we really did put a lot of effort into scaling those to give them the type of answers to be successful in our ecosystem.
Sure. No, look, I appreciate you sharing an inside look. And look, any potential Klaviyo partners or early stage Klaviyo partners, Dan is giving you some answers to the test. So study up on those guides. They're really telling you how to work better with them, which leads me to my final question on this first deep dive, Dan, which is, okay, let's just say you've had these inbound applications or whatever, you've qualified them, you've sized them up, and you've committed to at least go through at least a test period, so to speak, which, by the way, people should do more of instead of committing multi-year things. So the next question for you, Dan, is it's early days. What signals or what actions can a net new partner show you in the first 90 days? You're a seasoned veteran now, where you can you see it, and you're oh, they're going to be successful. Yep, they're showing, and again, early stage, right? First 90 to 120 days, you see a signal, you see some action or behavior, and you're oh, yep, they're gonna be one to watch. I have a good feeling about that. Versus oh, whoa, no, we're probably gonna have to have a little bit of a breakup with that one. So what are some signals? And any Klaviyo partner listening right now, this is good stuff.
What I look for, because you hear a lot of great sounding pitches, if you will, on why an integration is really awesome for a customer base. And there's a lot of great, valid ones in there. But
those are scripted. That's easy. Yeah, exactly.
They're scripted. And so you can fake that. What sells me on this stuff, perks my ears, and it is so rare, shockingly, is a data backed. But I think important aspects of the data back of really showing a before and after in an A/B test and speaking to those, because I think it's easy to have vanity metrics on some of, you install this new things and you tie it to revenue, and not to say it's not working, but it's what is that incremental lift that it provided. And it's very rare that I see incremental lift and or feedback from customers on that incremental lift and how it helped them grow their business. I typically don't see either of those. And if I get both of them, I get a customer being this helped me grow my business for X, Y, and Z reason. Here's the data to prove it, and not just the data of attributed revenue, whatever it is, but the lift that we saw. We did an A/B test and we saw this. I think that's really interesting, really powerful. And it also, I'd say, that doesn't just sell it to me, it sells to the CSMs as well, which is probably more important than selling to me.
100%. Loved everything about that. So much to unpack. First, on that very last point, yeah, you're not just selling you, which they also need to do, by the way. Otherwise, you're not going to risk your credibility. But more importantly, if you're trying to activate a partner like Klaviyo, yeah, you got to activate the Dans of the world, but you also need to prepare him to then go, pitch on your behalf to the other stakeholders. So I like the outcomes driven approach. What's one singular outcome that you can realistically deliver in the first 90 days, which is much smaller than an outcome I would expect on, say, a 12-month horizon. Deliver that, right? And then I can take that to the rest of the horses. And then as another kind of underrated element or a signal that I personally think is really good in the early days is speed. Right? Just speed to act. Again, the smaller fish who has more to gain than the bigger fish is the one who has to be faster. So if I'm trying to like get in Klaviyo's good graces and I'm much smaller than them, I'm fast. Dan emails me something or asks for something, I'm lightning quick. Dan slacks me and needs something, I'm going back lightning quick. Like I'm shipping everything as fast as possible. That to me shows a lot, right? It shows that, okay, you didn't just blow smoke and you tried to like wow me in the discovery pitch, but then now that we're actually like doing something, you like kind of take a back seat. Speed to me says a lot, and that's something I really put a lot of emphasis on.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Cool. All right. Well, look, we'll go into the second deep dive, which is a bit of a contrarian take, so to speak, and it's a hot topic within tech partnerships specifically, which is all around the concept of like partner intros, right? Like it's well known that one of the hallmark benefits of like a viable, successful tech partner program at marketplace strategy is on the product customer side of things, and it also has a lot of ancillary benefits on like pure sales. That being said, we all know in tech partnerships, in order to like motivate reciprocity and stand up a long-term tech partnership, you do need to transact. You do need commercial activity kind of between both sides, i.e. referrals and co-sell. So the question for you is, you've said, and we've talked about this a lot, you haven't seen many examples of tech partners, getting intros, so to speak, for one another at scale, so to speak. So I'm curious, why do you think that is? And what do you think that we can do about it?
Yeah, I mean, there are exceptions that come into play. It tends to be more in the enterprise space or executive relationships. So like it can happen, but I think the point that you mentioned is at scale. And really it's having a long-term plan for the partnership. And I think the big thing is just when you ask or when you provide an intro for a partner, it tends to go through somebody like a CSM. And they're putting their reputation on the line for this. They probably have other initiatives that they need to push. So you're asking them to prioritize your partner over those other initiatives for the mind share for that customer. But the challenge is that that customer, unless you have any other signal, is probably not evaluating that technology at that time. And maybe they will in 6 months, but they're probably not going to remember this email from 6 months ago that talked about whatever platform. And so it's that intense signal that I think is key to make referrals work well, and just make sure there's a moment of time to where a referral is an opportunity. How do we capitalize on that? I haven't seen a lot of success at scale of trying to force that interest of a partner when they're not considering buying, but rather how do we capitalize on those moments when they are?
Yeah, no, I think that's great stuff. And I agree on the intense piece, which can be difficult to kind of surface and automate at scales and then be able to leverage on. I've actually come around a lot on this concept of tech partner referrals. Like obviously that's where I cut my teeth. I was put like heavy quotas on my head, like source one, close one revenue quotas. And I was 100% getting these from like referrals from tech partners, which was one of the hardest things I ever did in my career. I think about things differently now. Once I started to get into leadership roles and dealing with like the CEOs and CFOs, you actually learn that they actually don't love referral motions, right? Because one thing you learn as you get to the executive level, they don't like unpredictability. They don't like variance and randomness. And guess what? Referrals are highly random, right? You could have for one successful relationship where it's like popping off, maybe you're just getting a ton of referrals from some like one lucky champion at that company who's just a rock star. And what happens if they leave the company? Does everything fall down? So like referrals are inherently and implicitly like random and variance. I think there's a lot of value. I think it's nice to start a potential partnership trying to get a couple referrals because you ultimately need to get a mutual adoption base of your integration going, whether it's through referrals or customer marketing campaigns or through your CSM. So you do need to grow your mutual customer base where I think referrals can play in. But to my other point, Dan, that I want to get a reaction from you on is I think once you start to get to like second level of the tech partnership, I think referrals shouldn't nearly be prioritized as much. And I think you need to think bigger picture, higher leverage, bigger scale. Like, how can you really systematically drive real traffic, like in the hundreds and thousands of installs? Because referrals are one-off. So anyways, my point blank question for you, Dan, is like, this might be shocking for you to hear, like Chris Lavoie is backing off on tech partner referrals, which I am. Yeah. So, but like, it doesn't scale as well. It's too dependent on the individuals involved. It puts a lot of burden on your CS team and even your sales team. So my question for you to react to is like if, how do you think about that? Like referrals, it can't be all or nothing. It can't be the only way that you're trying to drive like real value from a commercial side of a tech partnership. And then the second question might be is like, what other things might you be able to do with a tech partnership to kind of drive real commercial success?
Yeah. Gosh, so much
a lot
to
there.
unpack on that one.
Yeah.
I think, it is tricky. And this could go into big rabbit hole conversation of goal setting and those type of things, because
Sure.
I think two things can be true. I think referrals and direct source leads come from technology partners. And also they're brutally unpredictable, hard to get, difficult to like when you step into work that day, what is the lever that you're going to pull to make those things happen?
Exactly.
And so difficult to do. So like where else can you make impact? We could talk about influence revenue, co-selling, those type of things. But to stay on the referral side, if you want to make those happen, and I hope it's not the only thing that somebody's focused on with a tech partnership, because I feel like those kind of flame out a lot of the time. When
100%.
there's not a holistic strategy with it. But I remember Rich Gardner, my old manager and a guest on this podcast recently.
God love him.
I remember when we moved over to a comp structure where referral revenue mattered, it was stressful. It was hard for the exact reasons that we just talked about. And I remember talking to Rich. I'm just like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do to make this happen? What are those levers that I pull? And he had some advice. He's like, Dan, what would you do if you weren't measured on referral revenue? And I was like, well, I do this enablement and lunch and learn or whatever it was. He's like, just do that. And so it's just like, oh yeah, it's like when you do the right things for the partnership, you tend to get the source revenue. Now, certainly there's some like tactics to use to help with that. But generally speaking, if you do the right thing and you're leading with the value and showing both customers and the field of your partners the value of this, the referrals tend to follow.
I love that. I think that's a great insight. Not surprisingly, the old sage Rich dropping some wisdom bombs on you, which I think is great. But yeah, like long story short, like do the right thing, be valuable, and good things will come. But the big thing is like don't put all your eggs in one basket on the referral side. Like this may be a controversial take, and it's cool to start there, especially since you probably have like quotas hanging on your head. But like you need to like if you want like a really successful long-term strategic tech partnership, it can't just be referrals because then not enough people will care to get involved. Product won't care. Even sales, like they benefit, but like not as much as you might think. So you need more stuff, more eggs in the basket. Otherwise, it's a house of cards, right? You pull one card out, one rep's gone, the whole thing crumbles.
Absolutely. I'd say the other big point here is from a prioritization standpoint, if source revenue is a big goal of yours, really dissecting the customer purchase journey and which of those partners are you downstream of. I've seen it too many times to where you're upstream of that and you're like, hey, love the partnership, love working with you all. How do we get this referral motion going? It's like, this is not how our customers buy downstream. And so it's just
100%.
So it creates this really challenging referral motion to some partners because some they're in a position to send Klaviyo referral revenue, and for whatever reason, Klaviyo is not, or vice versa. And it just creates this like one-sided partnership. And so if you're just focused on source revenue, that partnership's not going to be sustainable because it's one-way street. It's never going to work long-term. So you have to be more comprehensive. Like, okay, well, you're sending me these referrals. Is there something I can offer you of similar value, even if it is different?
Yeah, I mean that one that's hot. Like that is a PhD advanced level take on kind of finding the right fit from a partner. I could literally talk about this exact topic for hours, which comes down to like ideal partner profile is the topic really. The lazy approach that 99% of partner managers take, 90% take is, oh, I went to the partner's website. They have similar logos as us. That's a good fit. It's like, oh my God, right? Two key things. You mentioned one of them. One is persona overlap. Right. And to be honest, like, if we're just being blunt, that was one of the challenges we ran into back in the gorgeous Klaviyo days is like, we had an integration and there was a sliver of personas within our mutual customer base that would care to talk to both of us at the same time. But like you've got VP of marketings and marketing directors and CMOs using Klaviyo. We've got customer support agents using our platform. They're like, why would we talk to Klaviyo? And your reps or your stakeholders are like, why would we talk to Gorgeous? So like, who literally is the user and purchaser of your platform? The more those match up with a partner, huge check mark. But then to Dan's really, really smart point, at what point in your average customer's life cycle is your solution purchased? And you can use a variety of metrics like employee count, revenue count. So as a really powerful example, AirCall, who you referenced earlier, like a phone support automation platform. When I was at Gorgeous, with this really cool integration, we could send them deals like you would not believe. Like it was literally to this day the most insane thing I've ever seen. Like every day we had reps referring them deals, but they could not send us any deals. And my boss, Phil, who you know, who's a monster, love him to death. He's like, Chris, I didn't hire you to send 1 million leads to AirCall. I hired you to get 1 million leads back. So when are you going to turn that on? And it took me a lot longer than it clearly took you, Dan. And I finally had this eureka moment where we did cross-beam mapping and we enriched all of AirCall's records and we created this custom field called current help desk, right? And it turned out like 85% of AirCall's customers at the time already had a help desk, like Zendesk or whoever, right? Whereas like none of our customers had a phone solution, right? Because they were purchased after we were. So AirCall was reaping the benefits of that, but we couldn't get anything from them. So this is all to say, you want to be the AirCall of the world, right? You want to find a partner, right? You know, if you want to be greedy, if you can find a partner who their customers purchase their solution at an earlier stage in their growth, say 5 million in revenue, 10 million in revenue, 100 employees, and then guess what happens? They grow a little bit, they hit a new pain point, and then they need your solution. Guess what? Your partner will have a natural gravity to like refer you in. So not to put words in your mouth, Dan, is that more or less what you're kind of hitting at there?
Yeah, absolutely. And then you just have to get creative on the two-way value exchange. And
Sure.
there
Yeah.
opportunities for that. But yeah, you have to know what you're working with and what's feasible.
Exactly. In the AirCall example, they couldn't refer us anything back, so we just chucked them on their rev share, a very lucrative rev share agreement. So we got a ton of cash back, which we then used to fund other things. So like, it worked out. But to Dan's point, like that's something you got to figure out. Okay, cool. All right, we're going to head into the last deep dive, which is all about enablement as a growth lever, which has some AI stuff in here as well. We're going to talk about how to deliver frameworks without, leaking sensitive info. So the first question for you, Dan, is when you talk about effective enablement, which is something that you're definitely like a leading specialist on, like what are the core components that a lot of people miss when it comes to like really effective enablement for your tech partners?
Yeah, it's oftentimes not comprehensive enough. And I think people overlook, there's one just, you have to install this integration. You have to sell people on why you would install this integration. Then you need to install the integration. Then you need to set up the integration. Then you should optimize it afterwards. And are you touching on all of those? And one of the challenges, and this when it comes to the organization of that enablement stuff and why I'm excited for like some AI stuff we can get into later, is every person who looks at that content is going to be at a different part of that journey. And so It really puts an emphasis on being comprehensive, but really well organized, because it could just totally be way too much and you lose somebody, they stall out immediately. But you need a lot of answers there. And I think it's wildly important to get people to use these integrations. But also when we think of like cost to serve for CSMs and your customer support teams, they're going to get these questions. And I would recommend follow those support tickets on those integrations, see what questions are coming up and making sure that's in your documentation. Because oftentimes it's not, and it's putting a strain on your support team or your CS team. So that'd be one tip.
I think that's great. And just to follow up to that, to introduce AI into the conversation as it pertains to enablement. And you were early, like you've always been early and a quick adopter of like, how can you create things at scale? How can you create like self-serve things? Like I know you were big and instrumental in like building like internal wikis effectively for like reps at Klaviyo to be able to like get rich information on demand for like partners. So you've always kind of been leading the charge in this pursuit. So the next question for you is like, how are you thinking about AI as an enablement tool, enablement layer, as opposed to a gimmick, which I think a lot of people get quickly excited by AI and they test like one thing and then it doesn't really scale for them. So like, how do you personally think about AI as like an enablement tool and layer?
I am so excited for what AI is going to do in enablement specifically and referral stuff too. I could talk about a tactic there that I'm trying. So
yep.
I think one of the challenges, so there's the content creation that I just touched on and just being really comprehensive. There's a lot of different elements of an integration we won't touch on. But my challenge has always been like, I could write a 5-page paper on how great an integration is. Nobody's going to read my 5-page paper. It just doesn't come in because they tend to care about, hey, this one paragraph because I'm trying to figure out this use case. And so it's really difficult because then if I have it all fragmented or if I keep it simple, then people want more and they want to get more, they want less. And that's always been my challenge with creating enablement material. But that's where AI is just going to come in amazing. So all of my enablement material that I created, I plug into a database that we have a custom GPT and we use AI tooling internally to help answer questions as well. All of my enablement content is fed into there. So my field doesn't need to go in and try to find my 1-pager or a 5-pager and like find the one paragraph that's relevant to them. They just simply plug in the question. The AI knows the material that I created for it and surfaces that immediately. So I just think enablement content just an entirely new level of effectiveness with layering in AI to discover and actually use it. Because that's the one challenge with enablement material, how many people are actually reading this stuff. And so
Yep.
it's going to really increase usage.
Yeah, I love that. I could talk about that topic all day long. And just two quick points on what Dan went through there on the enablement front is like, one of the salient implicit challenges of like the old enablement path is like, as soon as you create content, it's all immediately static, right? And outdated, right? Like every month that goes by, it's outdated. And then the second thing is when you present just like raw wiki text style information, which was like the old way of consuming information, it assumes that you know what your readers and users want to know, right? And the hope is that you just present enough information that your chances are they'll get what they need. But in this modern world where everyone is now so comfortable with like agentic experiences where you're like talking to like some chat widget or a chat bot, I think that's the future. And Dan hit the nail on the head. And I've personally created custom GPTs that I've deployed across sales and success where it's like, I call it like the master partnership database copilot, much better name than that. And effectively it's like, hey, look, it's trained up on everything you need to know about all of our partners' database effectively. So like rich information is like, hey, like what is Klaviyo's pricing model? Hey, like what is Klaviyo's ICP? What does our integration with Klaviyo do? Right? Like, who's our POC over at Klaviyo that I should reach out to for sales, for customer success? Because then you're de-risking, to Dan's point. They know what they want to ask, right? So don't present them with an essay, 2,000 word blog per article. Store the information into some like chat-like experience, and then they can just ask whatever the hell they want, and then boom, they instantly get it. So is that kind of more in line with what you were kind of referring to there, Dan?
That's exactly it. And so it helps with enablement and it goes directly into referrals as well.
Got it. Okay, cool. So then I'll follow up with beyond the enablement use case, which I think is super powerful. Like let your mind go wild. Like as you think about the next 12 to 18 months, like where else do you see AI making a big impact? You can focus just on yourself and your own role or partnerships more broadly, but like what are you most excited about in terms of where you think AI can fit and either remove the need to do some work or just accelerate and make other work more productive and higher quality? Where does your mind go on that one?
I think that referrals to tech partners, given the customer journey stuff we talked about earlier, is finally going to be unlocked at a more predictive level with layering in AI.
Yep.
And I think a couple things need to be true in terms of your internal tech stack to make that happen. But if you're using a call recorder, like a Gong, and then you're plugging that into AI tools, you're now able to get a overall view of all these conversations that are having with customers to understand, hey, what are the nature of those conversations? What are the problems that customers are trying to solve? And do you have partners that solve those problems?
Yep.
And when you rewind the clock 6 months ago, the challenge was, we'd go through Gong calls and try to find a referral opportunity. And what that looks like is you find that opportunity, then you go to a CSM and be like, hey, it sounds like a customer is struggling with this. We have a partner that does this. Let us know if you want an introduction. And that's great, but the problem is on these calls, oftentimes there's existing customers talking about the integration that they're already using. So there was a lot of noise out there, but the AI can take away that noise. And so like I could run a script that just gives me referral opportunities for all my key partners, who those customers are, who the CSM was, what was that conversation around. So then I could go to that CSM and advocate for my partner as a referral opportunity. And it just became 100 times more efficient and actually feasible to do that. So I'm super excited about that. I think we're still like getting there from a tooling and emotion perspective, but certainly I think in the next 6 to 8 months is going to change how tech partnerships operates.
Yeah, no, I love that use case. And I think one of the where AI is the strongest is when it has more data and obviously clean data. And it does really well with like high volume type stuff. And that's where it can give you the most bang for your buck. So I think that referral use case is great because you have a complex orchestration at play. You have customer calls, ton of text and information to sift through. And you need to be able to sort between a real opportunity versus a bad opportunity and push those workflows. So the second last question of the entire interview, Dan, we'll wrap up, is on that use case, like who owns those workflows? Because I agree that that's a huge unlock, but unless you're like buying some like point solution out of the box that can like do all of these use cases, like how do you think about where partner managers should be spending, like actually like doing things with AI versus like things that they should be like expecting AI to automate? Because I think where we're at in the maturity curve with AI is like most people are comfortable using, ChatGPT, for like to get something immediately, but not as many people are comfortable like building like workflows and systems. So how do you think about what work should, is okay to be manual even with AI versus the other stuff, which should definitely just be automated as much as possible? Because I think people struggle with where to put their time.
Yeah. How I'm thinking about it right now with that specific use case with it is I think we have to get comfortable setting up automations with AI. And so identifying those opportunities. And basically, I want to take what would normally take an action of 1,000 actions I would need to do and distill that down to the 10. And I don't necessarily think that I'm ready to give up those 10 actions to AI yet, because it's certainly not perfect. And so it's going to help me distill that down to the 10. But when it comes to, okay, here are the 10 customer calls that highlights a problem, I think it's a referral opportunity. I'm going to go back and I'm going to listen to those calls. I'm going to really make sure, hey, was this right? Does this really solve? Because I'm not trying to this kind of goes back to the CSM conversation of, if I just send an AI bot to ping them and, hey, it sounds like you can use this partner based off of this call, if that's not perfect, I'm going to ruin their trust. They're going to hate my bot and they're going to shut it off. But if I validate it myself and I am a trusted resource for this, and I go to that CSM and be like, I heard this call, I can validate that. It seems like they're having this issue. Here's some content from my partner that talks about solving for this issue. If you think it's a fit, let me know. No pressure, anything like that. But just hey, we're solving problems here. That's the beauty about technology partnerships, is it's really at its core, you're just solving problems. And so that's where I add that human element right now, because it's a validation, but a personal touch. And at the end of the day, I need that trust. And if I could lose that trust, going back to the beginning of this conversation, it takes a long time to build that up. And I try to build that up at Klaviyo over the past 5 years, but you could lose it really quick. And so I don't want to lose it. So that's why that's still the main.
Yeah, I like that approach. A key takeaway there is how to ease into automating more. I think a good exercise is plot everything on an XY curve. On one axis, it's how much valuable time could this save me? And on the other axis is how comfortable am I if this thing screws up? What's the ramifications, right? So it's what you're trying to index on is high value time that you can get back, where the risk isn't so crazy that if you don't have hands on, the worst case is not the absolute worst case. So I think that's a good mental model to work through. Last question we'll get you, because we know we're out of time, Dan. It's more a question around Klaviyo's philosophy and kind of how they're communicating expectations around AI upskilling. I ask pretty well every guest this. I've asked CEOs directly about this. Toby Luca, Shopify CEO, famously had a memo leaked last year where he was basically hey, everyone, we are now an AI company. If you don't level up in AI, effectively, here's the door, right? And he owned that. So my question is as much as you're willing to share, how is Klaviyo and how is Andrew kind of communicating throughout the org, hey, we're really expecting you to lean into AI, experiment with AI, become more proficient in AI, not threatening you, but just really making it clear that that's the expectation. Because candidly, even as of now, some companies aren't putting that much expectation. Some companies like Shopify are putting tremendous expectations. So where does Klaviyo kind of fit within the spectrum of how they're communicating expectations for all employees to upskill?
Yeah. Trying to think, what can I share? What shouldn't I? But I would
say anything you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it is very clearly an important tool that we need to embrace at Klaviyo. And this is both from installing AI into our product and improve your efficiency on your day-to-day. And so there's very clear messaging on just hey, you should do this. And there's some tactics that they've rolled out to help encourage that. And really, because it could be a little scary to jump into this stuff. And so they've done a really good job of providing a hand to help you get involved, but then also other ways of encouraging it too. But it's very clearly a priority. Just it should be. I mean, it's a game changer for our world. I know there's hype. I know every podcast is going to be talking about AI, but I think there's a reason for it, because it is valid. It's going to change the way we work. And if you're not adopting it to at least some level, I think you're missing a really big opportunity.
100%. Well, we appreciate you sharing that. I totally agree. I mean, look, you can't survive and thrive as a company if only 10% of your workforce is leaning into AI. They can't drag the rest of you. You just won't stay. They'll just let you go as quickly as they can. So appreciate you sharing that. But look, Dan, we're at time. This was tremendously valuable. I can't wait to get this published. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.